right, shalom and welcome back to our production. My name is Aki Shalomo Ben Israel, and we are here for another edition of Remembering What They Hid. What we're doing today is we're progressing into chapter 1 of the book of Jasher. A note before we begin. As we read through the book of Jasher and any other book that we believe to be written by Hebrews, Israelites, descendants of those who are known to be Jews, we will be reading any words rendered as God according to the Hebrew name Yahuwah or Yah, which is the shortened poetic form of Yahuwah. Any names for the Messiah, we will be reading according to his Hebrew name, Yahusha. Any words rendered as Lord, we will be reading as Master or the Master, which is a closer translation to what the Hebrew Adonai would have been translated to in English. With that, I would like to welcome you as you sit back, relax, and enjoy our reading. The book of Jasher. This is the book of the generations of man, whom Yah created upon the earth on the day when the Master Yahuwah made heaven and earth. Chapter 1. And Yah said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And Yah created man in his own image. And Yah formed man from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living being endowed with speech. And the Master said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make unto him a helpmeet. And the Master caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took away one of his ribs, and he built flesh upon it, and formed it, and brought it to Adam. And Adam awoke from his sleep, and behold, a woman was standing before him. And he said, this is bone of my bones, and it shall be called woman, for this has been taken from man. And Adam called her name Eve, and she was the mother of all living. And Yah blessed them, and he called their names Adam and Eve in the day that he created them. And the Master Yah said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the face of the earth. And the Master Yahuwah took Adam and his wife, and he placed them in the garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. And he commanded them and said unto them, from every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat thereof you shall surely die. And when Yahuwah had blessed and commanded them, he went from them. And Adam and his wife dwelt in the garden according to the command which the Master had commanded them. And the serpent, which Yahuwah had created with them in the earth, came to them to incite them to transgress the command of Yahuwah, which he had commanded them. And the serpent enticed and persuaded the woman to eat from the tree of knowledge. And the woman hearkened to the voice of the serpent, and she transgressed the word of Yahuwah, and took from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And she ate, and she took from it, and also gave to her husband, and he ate. And Adam and his wife transgressed the command of Yahuwah, which he commanded them. And Yahuwah knew it, and his anger was kindled against them, and he cursed them. And the Master Yahuwah drove them that day from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which they were taken. And they went and dwelt at the east of the Garden of Eden. And Adam knew his wife, Eve, and she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. And she called the name of the firstborn Cain, saying, I have obtained a man from the Master. And the name of the other she called Abel. For she said, in vanity we came into the earth, and in vanity we shall be taken from it. And the boys grew up, and their father gave them a possession in the land. And Cain was a tiller of the ground, and Abel a keeper of the sheep. And it was at the expiration of a few years that they brought an approximating offering to the master. And Cain brought from the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought from the firstling of his flock, from the fat thereof. And Yahuwah turned and inclined to Abel in his offering, and a fire came down from the master from heaven and consumed it. And unto Cain and his offering the master did not turn, and he did not incline to it, for he had brought from the inferior fruit of the ground before the master. And Cain was jealous against his brother on the account of this, and he sought a pretext to slay him. And in some time after, Cain and Abel his brother went one day into the field to do their work. And they were both in the field, Cain tilling and plowing his ground, and Abel feeding his flock. And the flock passed that which Cain had plowed in the ground, and it sorely grieved Cain on this account. And Cain approached his brother Abel in anger and said to him, What is there between me and thee, that thou comest to dwell and bring thy flock to feed on my land? And Abel answered his brother Cain and said unto him, What is there between me and thee, that thou shalt eat the flesh of my flock, and clothe thyself with their wool? Now therefore, put off the wool of my sheep, which thou hast clothed thyself, and recompense me for their fruit and flesh, which thou hast eaten. And when thou shalt have done this, I will then go from thy land as thou hast said. And Cain said to his brother Abel, Surely, if I slay thee this day, who will require blood from me? And Abel answering Cain said, Surely Yahuwah, who made us in the earth, he will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from thee should thou slay thee, for the master is the judge and arbiter. And it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon the earth. And now, if thou shouldest slay me here, surely Yahuwah knowest thy secret views, and will judge thee for the evil which thou didst declare to do unto me this day. And when Cain heard the words which Abel his brother had spoken, behold, the anger of Cain was kindled against his brother Abel for declaring this thing. And Cain hastened and rose up, and took the iron part of his plowing instrument, with which he suddenly smote his brother, and slew him. And Cain spilt the blood of his brother Abel upon the earth, and the blood of Abel streamed upon the earth before the flock. And after this, Cain repented having slain his brother, and he was sadly grieved, and he wept over him, and it vexed him exceedingly. And Cain rose up and dug a hole in the field, wherein he put his brother's body, and he turned the dust over it. And the master knew what Cain had done to his brother. And the master appeared to Cain, and said unto him, Where is Abel thy brother that was with thee? And Cain dissembled, and said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the master said unto him, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground, where thou hast slain him. For thou hast slain thy brother, and hast dissembled before me, and did imagine in thine heart that I saw thee not, nor knew all thy actions. But thou didst this thing, and didst slay thy brother for naught, and because he spoke rightly to thee. And now, therefore, cursed be thou from the ground which opened its mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand, and wherein thou did bury him. And it shall be, when thou shalt till it, it shall no more give thee its strength as in the beginning. For thorns and thistles shall the ground produce, and thou shalt be moving and wandering in the earth until the day of thy death. And at that time Cain went out from the presence of the master, from the place where he was, and he went moving and wandering in the land toward the east of Eden, he and all belonging to him. And Cain knew his wife in those days, and she conceived and bare a son. And she called his name Enoch, saying, In that time, the master began to give him rest and quiet in the earth. And at that time, Cain also began to build a city, and he built the city, and he called the name of the city Enoch, according to the name of his son. For in those days, the master had given him rest upon the earth, and he did not move about and wander as in the beginning. And Arad was born to Enoch, and Arad begat Mechuiel, and Mechuiel begat Methusael. This wraps up chapter 1 of the book of Jasher. I want to thank you guys for subscribing to our Remembering What They Hid series. A couple of notes I have as we were reading through this, and I may do this from time to time as we close out these chapters. If you will notice, as we're reading through the book of Jasher, Jasher is going to skip over some of the details that you may find in the book of Genesis and subsequent books as well. But there are details here in Jasher that you may not find in Genesis. For example, as we were reading through Jasher, we didn't get the details of all of the communication between the serpent and Eve and Adam. But we did get more details about what happened with the offering that Cain and his brother Abel offered. I know oftentimes people ask themselves, as did I, why is it that the Most High accepted one and not the other? And I've heard a lot of theories on this, but here we read that Abel, who was a tender of the flock, brought of the firstlings of his flock, and also of the best of the fat thereof, whereas Cain brought what was not the best of his produce. And so when we read here that Yahuwah the Most High inclines his ear to the offering of Abel, we also see why. Whereas we also see why Yahuwah did not incline his ear to the offering that Cain brought. We see a little bit more of the details of the relationship dynamics between Cain and Abel. We see that although we may have presumed that when Cain slew Abel, it was just a matter of the older brother being bigger, stronger, slaying his younger brother who was just smaller and not able to defend himself. But in their communication, we see a little bit of a different dynamic. When Cain reproached his brother for allowing his flock to feed on his land, we see that Abel had no problem speaking up for himself, and as a matter of fact told him very clearly, if you have a problem with my flock feeding on your land, I'm going to need you to take the wool off your back that you get from my flock and take the meat that you've digested and somehow figure out a way to return that to me. And if you can somehow figure out the way that you can return that to me, then yeah, I'll take my flock from your land and it'll be as you said. But if you can't figure out how to give me back the meat that you've already put in your belly and digested, what are we talking about? Another note, we read about Eve, and the Hebrew of Eve's name is Hawa. And so I didn't try to change that in text as we discussed about the name of the Heavenly Father and where we read Lord. We choose to render those names in a way that we deem to be more appropriate, or for the reasons that we speak to you guys about on our YouTube channels, Project Wake Up Jacob, where we talk about the importance of the name of the Heavenly Father, the importance of the name of the Master, the importance of the name of the Messiah, if that makes sense. Another thing that we notice in detail here is we get an understanding of how Cain slew his brother Abel. He literally took an instrument from what he was using to plow the field. This is interesting. Last interesting thing that I will point out here is that in the book of Genesis, you get the detail as Adam and Hawa are removed from the garden that there must be a sacrifice made for them transgressing the Heavenly Father's command. And the understanding that we receive from Torah, from the book of Leviticus, is that in those times, and now we're talking about Adam's other descendants, those who tend to the sacrifice are of a priestly caste, right? They're called Levites later on. But this would have been a priestly caste also, who would have been in charge of the sacrifice even before they left the garden. Had to be a priest. And now we looked at Abel, who seemed to be righteous in what he did when presenting the offering. And he would have been, in our understanding, doing the duty of a righteous priest, bringing the offering. Cain had the ability or the opportunity to present himself as a righteous priest, but did not. And so here we see a picture also of the individual who was in charge of the flock, of the herd, being in the position of a righteous priest, but then being slain by another priest or potential priest. In other words, I would ask if what we witnessed was a blood sacrifice. Just something to think about. So with that, family, I want to thank you guys again for your subscription. If you feel like what we are presenting here is beneficial, tell someone about it. Invite them to subscribe. And with that, we're going to close out. And I want you to stay tuned as we continue our reading through the book of Jasher in our segment that we refer to as Remembering What They Hid. Shalom, family. We'll see you next time. Yahweh.
I say yes, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Nevertheless, I must confess. Yes, this is Project Wake Up Jacob. On the Sabbath we rest.